Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, friends.
Hello.
Hello. As always, I am joined by my extra spicy, sensational co-host, Kate Sitar. I was trying to switch that up a little bit.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm
Extra spicy, extra crispy.
caught off guard. You only get one extra hello. Extra crispy.
Ooh. Yes. Well, extra crispy. Can I have another hello for the extra crispy?
Hello.
Thank you. I'm looking for a hello. Thank you. 2. I like my 2. And even more excitingly, if it's possible, we are joined by Sarah Kiken, who is a copywriter. She is a CCA student. She is a CCA Next Level member. She is on the road and seeing the world.
Also super spicy and spectacular.
Also super spicy, spectacular, and extra crispy. The wonderful Sarah Kiken. Hello, Sarah.
Oh my gosh. Well, hello for that one.
Yes. 3 hellos. Boom. My day is
Thanks so
made.
much for having me here.
Thank you for being
long
here.
overdue, if
It
we're
is
being
long
honest.
overdue. It is. It is long overdue. I know you got on. I was like, oh, this must be our second, third episode. No. What do you know? Long overdue. So
Yeah, I'm really, I'm an exclusive podcast guest. This is a real get.
Oh,
You are the poor really.
yes. Yeah, we're winning here. Just saying. Kate and I winning, and everybody listening and watching as well, winning. Yeah. So Sarah, we kind of we definitely want to get into your story as well, but I kind of teased the fact that you are perpetually on the road. So can you share with us what? Can you explain to everybody what in the world I mean when I say that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I live full time in a fifth wheel. I say RV and then people think I'm driving a motorhome like Robin Williams. I am not doing that. I am towing a big fifth wheel with a big old truck though. I've been doing this for 6 years now, which is really crazy to think about. I started in 2019 and I was going to do it for a year. And here I am 6 years later, still doing it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Has there been any part of have you hit all of the states?
No, I'm actually afraid to go out east a little bit. I mean, I've been to like Florida, but the Northeast is really scary to me because I have heard that it's a little bit dicier with bigger RVs. There's just less space. The roads are narrower. There's a lot of tunnels. So I haven't been to the Northeast yet, although I would love to because Boston is one of my favorite cities that I've been to by plane, but I have not gotten over there yet. But most of the rest of the country I have been to. So
that's true.
I've done quite a big chunk.
Yes,
I think
that makes a lot of sense.
Plot a path for you. This is very selfishly speaking because Nikki and I are both in the Northeast.
Yeah.
But I think we need to plot a path for you that's just like
a safe path.
Navigable. Exactly. Like
maybe
like the cities.
Don't drive into Boston.
Yeah, don't drive to Boston.
I'd take an Uber to get in.
I know. It is very appealing too because I'm a total history nerd. So the Northeast is just like a perfect place for me to visit. So one summer I will get up there. And I need to get to Maine at some point. So
so beautiful.
A lot more room in Maine too once you get out of
a lot more room in Maine. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And you are coming to us live from Arizona as we speak, from Tucson, right?
That's right. Yep. I am dodging the winter weather. I'm from Denver, so it is very cold in my home state, in my hometown. And I'm enjoying 80 degrees and sun here in Tucson.
Yeah.
She told us beforehand, everyone, that if you're watching on YouTube, you might think, oh, it's dark there in Arizona. No, it's too bright. So Sarah had to draw the shades for us to record this podcast. Be envious because I am.
Yeah.
I know I'm that jerk who's like, it's too nice and sunny here. Let me just pull the shades
Not a
down.
jerk at all. You are inspiring me to get out of where I am. So thank you.
It's true.
Everyone needs a break from winter every once in a while.
Agreed. A cousin of mine lives out in California, like Venice Beach area, and every winter she posts, "Winter is a choice." And I'm like, I guess so. I know. It's a lot easier to say that when you live in Venice Beach, but she is a fabulous person, so we'll let that slide.
That's hilariously annoying for everyone to follow her.
But she's also like awesome. But back to you, since you are the most important person on this podcast, and we are all dying to hear your story. So how did you get into copywriting? How did you what's that story?
Yeah, sure. Well, ever since I was a child, I knew I wanted to write marketing copy. Oldest story in the book. No, just kidding.
So true.
I did always want to be a writer, though. I think that's how a lot of us fall into it, right? Like we love to write. That's just always how I express myself. I am the world's worst visual artist, but I could write. So I latched onto that real early. But I kind of fell into the belief that you can't make a living writing. That's not a thing you can do unless you're an incredible novelist, which I was not. And so I still majored in English and history in college. As I mentioned, I'm a total history nerd and I love to write. So I figured may as well, spend 6 figures on a meaningless degree learning how to do that.
Sure, why not?
And I will say, I one of my favorite college experiences was a creative writing class that I took, and I think I did learn a lot of value from that. Whether or not it was worth the price of admission to go to a private college, that's debatable. But yeah, and then I graduated, and it was 2008, and the world had just collapsed. That's when I graduated college, and so I figured, I had all these plans to move to New York and work for a publisher, and then I thought, I'm actually pretty risk averse, which is probably weird to hear me say, given that I live in an RV and I live a lifestyle that seems very adventurous. But by nature, I'm a pretty cautious person. So I thought I better get a real job closer to home. So I worked for I knew I loved to write and I knew I loved travel. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be the next Bill Bryson, maybe I'll just start traveling and then eventually I'll figure out how to write better than I do. And I can write about travel. So I worked for a travel company for a long time. And I went to China and I went to Costa Rica and I went all over Europe. And I had lived abroad in school. I lived in New Zealand in college and I did a ton of travel-y stuff. And somehow just traveling didn't actually improve my writing skills. It turns out that if you want to be a better writer, you have to actually practice writing. So yeah, I kind of just kept working writing on the side and came back from traveling, fell into working for tech startups. And I would say that's kind of when I turned the corner and realized there might actually be something that I can personally offer that could help businesses do better. Because when I worked for tech startups, I was working in account management, working with customers. And I realized there was this huge disconnect between what customers were saying about a product and how they were using it and how they were interacting with it versus how the product team was making it. The product managers and the teams, the developers and the engineers almost never directly interacted with client feedback at all at startup after startup that I worked for. And it was crazy to me that there was just this huge gap between the people who were making the thing and the people who were meant to be buying the thing. And so that's kind of when I started dipping into copywriting at a corporate level, even though it wasn't my job. At a startup, anything is your job if you see a need and you start doing it. And so that's kind of how I started dabbling with it.
That's amazing. Good for you. And it's so true. In a startup, it's like, can you do that? Well, if you can't figure it out, it's your job now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
like, hey, no one else is doing this. Do you mind if I try? And at a lot of startups, they'll be like, oh my God, please.
Yeah. Right. Like, oh yeah, we forgot that we need to focus on messaging. Isn't that adorable? Adorable. Like,
and
oh, you mean the most important part of your business?
Obvious. Yes. Yeah. Also, these businesses are spending tens of thousands of dollars on consultants to revamp their brand every year. And in the meantime, no one's ever talking to the customer about what they want out of the product or how they're using it.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. And truly, like, listen, everyone, these are startups and these are companies that are getting funding. These are companies that are scrappy. These are companies. And they're forgetting about messaging until someone's like, oh, yeah, wait, messaging is important. So I know that sometimes we get in our heads and we're like, I don't know, what can I offer a company? What can I like? Such very important stuff. So don't hold yourself back. Anyway, back to your story. How did your career evolve from there?
Well, COVID changed a lot for me. So before COVID hit, I was, like I said, I was working for a tech startup. I was in the customer satisfaction wing of that business. So I was essentially managing accounts. And I loved my team, but I did not love that job. And so I was writing on the side just to entertain myself, really. I'd already started kind of joining the RV world at that point. So I started RVing while I still had that corporate job. I bought the RV and I was kind of doing side trips, and through various people I met in the RV community, I met some people who needed writers. So I met a couple who had a pretty big following on YouTube, and they wanted somebody to help with their blog content. And then I met somebody else who owned an agency, and she wanted a writer to help take on some work that she was doing for her clients. And so, I mean, we're talking like I was just earning pocket money doing this, like maybe 4 hours a week on the side, little projects here and there. But while I still had my corporate job, I was doing it just because I thought it was fun. And then COVID hit, and that fancy startup laid off half its workforce almost immediately, and they were gone within the year. So they really did not have any runway to withstand something like that. The startup I was working for at the time was really dependent on people going into physical locations. Like their biggest customers were alcohol companies that were sending reps into restaurants and places in person to go do surveys, essentially. So it was a big wake-up call for that business. And it was a big wake-up call for me because I realized, I'd been so risk-averse, right? Like my dad was an entrepreneur. He was a small business owner, and all I ever saw from him was stress and anxiety. And I thought, working for yourself must be stressful. It's always got to be a scramble. That's how it is. So I never wanted to do that. But then when I got laid off, I realized that the myth of job stability is only a myth. If you're working in a full-time job and you are just relying on that paycheck, you're really relying on someone else. You have zero control over what happens. So the market could change. That company could go out of business. They could change their priorities. It's happening to a ton of people right now. If you're listening to this might be you. And so, yeah, it was a huge wake-up call for me. And I'm honestly so glad that it happened because it really was freeing in so many ways. And it helped me realize, like, I actually think it's so much safer to work for myself because now I'm in control. So if things go wrong, I'm in charge of that. But also I get to work hard until things go well, right? And I know that I've acquired the skills to make sure that I can feed myself and bring myself income. So anyway, after COVID hit, I really had to decide what I wanted to try to do. And at that point, I figured it's now or never. I've always wanted to be a writer. I've been kind of practicing these skills at a very, very baby level. Maybe I just go all in on learning this and try it now. And so I started kind of looking around for how to actually learn how to be a copywriter for real, because I figured, doing, I don't know, like 30 total hours up to that point probably didn't qualify me. And that's when a friend sent me a link to an ad for the CCA. And that's how I found you guys. So it was perfect timing. It was kismet for sure.
Thank you to that friend.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
I know. I'm still annoyed that Facebook didn't put that in my feed. But anyway.
You are.
Yeah,
Us too.
Yeah, I know.
Come on.
But I'm glad our worlds collided.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you,
me
friend.
too.
A little bit of serendipity. Exactly.
Yeah.
Can't rely on tech. Got to rely on humans. See that?
Well, and also, to be fair, I was almost never on Facebook at that time.
It is a little hard to target
maybe
people who are
that's-
never on.
Maybe that's a part.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
say.
We just have a little sign, somebody running next to the RV, like, check this out. Click here. You're a writer. Yeah.
Right.
Haven't figured that out yet. We'll get on it.
Right.
I'm glad you said
right.
that, though, about the, it's such a mindset thing. I was just having this conversation literally today with a friend who's just like, oh, I'm so worried about my job being let go.
Yeah.
Living with that stress every day alone is like terrible. But I'm like, that's it. You're just lulled into a false sense of security. It's not actually ever there.
Exactly what you were
Nothing is
saying, Sarah.
safe.
Nothing is safe unless you are the one who is in control. And like you said,
Yeah.
you have the skills. You know exactly what to do to earn more money and or replace a client and or do whatever you want to do. It really you've got the ultimate control, right? You get to control exactly where you go, where you work from at any time, at least within the North America. And then, although, could you get on a ferry and go? Anyway, okay, focus.
I totally could.
Could
If my dogs weren't holding me here, I totally would.
So interesting.
Oh, yeah. I travel with 2 dogs.
Yeah, that's gonna limit you. Yes, but it's so interesting. Anyway, so you get to control entirely where you live, and then you also get to control entirely what you do, who you work with,
How much
what
you
you
make.
make, how much you make. Yeah, that's an amazing freedom that I think most people don't even are not even aware that that is a possibility.
Yeah, what does it feel like? I mean, I know what it feels, but do you like?
Oh my gosh. It's a dramatic change from where I was 5 years ago. I was just thinking about this because I had for a long time done a lot of journaling. Like when I was unhappy in my corporate job at that tech startup, I would journal every morning about like, okay, here's what I want to do and here's why. And I would write about it. And at one point I wrote down like my ideal day, and I found that journal recently and I read it. And that's exactly what my days are like now, in the sense that I get to control my schedule. I get to decide if I'm taking client calls that day. I get to decide if I'm going to go on a hike that morning and totally skip work because I want to hike on a weekday when the trails aren't busy. I get to decide if I want to work 7 days a week because I really want to dial it up so that I can take a vacation in a little bit. You know, like I get to control that faucet, and I get to turn things up or down rather than somebody telling me what to do. I think the other thing that I really love about it, and you teed this up so beautifully, Kate, is just the level of freedom to choose not only where you go, but also the level of value that you add. One of the things that I found really restrictive in a corporate job was there's always somebody metering your level of contribution, even in an environment like a tech startup where you could pick something up and say, hey, can I do this? There are always so many guardrails, right? Like there's a structure and a hierarchy in a corporate environment of any kind. And you might have ideas about the product. You know, there were things I would hear from customers and I would think this could completely transform our product. Why is no one doing anything about this? And it just wasn't circulating. Some of those ideas don't circulate in a big company. And I love now that I get to really feel like I'm contributing. You know, when I'm writing copy for somebody, I'm not just their copywriter. I'm a part of their business for the time that we're working together. And it's so beautiful to feel like I'm really adding value to somebody's business and to hear directly from them that I've directly added value to their business. And I never felt that in a corporate job. You know, even if you do like the work you do, you almost never see the tangible results of it. So I really love that. And then, yeah, I love that if I decide I'm done with Tucson tomorrow, I can pick up and go to the Grand Canyon if I want to. By the way, it's way too cold for that right now, but you know what I mean.
Stay south. Stay south.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I worked in national parks. I worked from Mexico, never on the beach. Way too sandy. But
it's just sand in the Keys.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just great. I love it. And freedom and flexibility have always been extremely important to me anyway. That's why even when I worked corporate, I was already like getting into that RV life because I just couldn't handle being in the office all the time. But I really believe that there's no better environment than freelancing if you want to be able to fully control what you're doing and how you're doing it. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. And to get to work with all kinds of different clients too, like all kinds of different projects and all kinds of different, I mean, talk about keeping it fresh.
Yeah. And I will say, you know, one of the best pieces of advice that I got from you, Nikki, when I joined the CCA was you talk in the course about don't limit yourself too early. Don't niche down right away. And I am so glad that you gave that advice because everybody in the market was telling me, go super narrow with your niche. You have to niche. And I think there's a time and a place for that advice, but it's not when you're starting any freelance business of any kind. Because even if you think you know who you want to work with, you really don't. You have to work with different kinds of people to see. I guarantee you, your business is going to look so different from, you know, year 1 to year 3 and then year 5. It changes all the time. And so my best client now is a client that I would have immediately said no to had you not given that advice because they were way outside my comfort zone. They were in a corner of tech I knew nothing about. It wasn't the kind of company that I thought I wanted to work with. And it has been the best relationship. And I would say a full 30% of my business now is either that client or referrals from them. Wow. And so yeah, say yes to everything early on because you just need to try things to know what you like and what you don't like. And even the stuff that doesn't work out, you're going to learn so much from it. So I love that you gave that advice. And I'm so pleased that I said yes to virtually everything in the beginning. You don't want to do that forever, but in the beginning, I think you have to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just explore. You never know what a client's going to be like until you start working with them. Unless you're getting some major red flags, in which case run away. But
Well, and half the time I feel like for me it's the people versus the what the thing is. You know, if it's great people, then
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Can you tell us about? I know obviously tech, but what are some of the other kinds of projects and clients and types of things that you've been working on?
Oh yeah. So I've done a little bit in tech. I've done some in SaaS because that's my background. So I've done a little bit of that, but I've also worked for a lot of really fun businesses I would never have, even known existed necessarily. Like I've fallen into kind of like a niche corner of the internet for a very specific type of dog training. So I've written a lot for dog trainers and like this very specific type of training. And that's been super fun to learn about. I've worked for a lot of coaches and trainers, and all of them have their own unique approach. And my favorite people to work with are usually solopreneurs because they're so excited about what they do. They're so passionate. They're so knowledgeable. And almost all of them have a really distinctive approach. And I really love working with them on how to tell that story and express that voice in a way that's going to get noticed online, because it is, that's a hard thing to do. Most of my clients are actually great writers, but it's just that when you sit down to write about your thing and you try to write your own marketing copy, it is really difficult to do.
It is. It really is. And I'm personally curious, and so maybe other people would be as well. How do the logistics work? Like, do you have a wireless router in your RV? Do you have how does that work? Hey there, it's Nikki. I wanted to take a very quick minute to make sure that you knew about our free on-demand copywriting training. Now, whether you are brand new to copywriting or you've been doing it for a while, but you just can't seem to hit those income goals, this training is for you. You are going to learn the 3 secrets to landing freelance copywriting work without relying on frustrating job bidding sites like Upwork or Fiverr, or without cold calling strangers. And if you've watched any of the student success stories on this channel, and if you haven't yet, check them out. This is the exact same training that they all started with. And I mean students like Kate K, who is making 6 figures working part-time and retired her husband to help her build her business. Students like Stuart, who replaced his full-time salary, which was a good one, with his freelance income and then some. Stacy, who hit 6 figures in her first 6 months as a freelance copywriter, and Ashley, who landed the in-house copywriting job of her dreams. They all started with this free training, and you can start with this free training too. So sign up right now at freecopywritingtraining.com.
I have 4 forms of internet because like I said, I'm risk averse.
Yeah.
So I want to always make sure that I can get connected. And I will say it is a lot easier now than it was. So now you have satellite internet as an option. Whereas before, when I started in 2019, it was pretty tricky. You pretty much just had cell or like public Wi-Fi. I have worked from McDonald's parking lots in the past just to,
me too, Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just need that good free public Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But, there were other times when I was kind of out in the middle of nowhere and I just had to make sure that I was camped somewhere with a strong enough cell signal. So I've got my phone's on Verizon. I've got an AT&T hotspot. I have satellite internet. And then I also have a T-Mobile. So
she's with all the carriers. I love
internet going on. Yeah. But it's just really important to make sure that I'm always connected. And sometimes I have been in situations where, especially when I had a corporate job, it was very stressful because I was on a lot of video calls. And so I would just end up driving to town a lot and park in a coffee shop all day and work on their internet. Now it's a lot better because I can decide when I have calls. And so if I know that I'm going to be in an area where, I can write, but I probably can't stream, that will change how I, set up my workday. But again, with satellite internet now, it's different. It's much easier.
That makes sense though to have all those backups, because it's one thing.
So smart.
Because the thing is our clients don't care where we're writing from or where we're taking the calls from, right? They don't care. But at the same time, if we are someplace different and we can't get online, we don't want to put any kind of seed of what's going on? Are they going to be unavailable to? It's one thing to
Yep.
be like, I'm here in my home office and oops, the Wi-Fi went out because they're doing work down the street. That's something I feel like most clients could be like, I don't love this, but I understand it because maybe it's happened to me too. But no one wants to see the idea of like, well, she's on the road. I don't know. Maybe we're not going to get this. So I love that it's like, no, you will get the same excellent service from me as if I'm sitting in an office down the hall. Actually, better.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up because I did not mention to a single one of my clients that I lived in an RV for my first 3 years in business.
Wow.
I was almost like afraid people would find out. So I was using, like fake Zoom backgrounds and other things so that no one would know where I was. And people would say, "Where are you from?" And I would say, "I'm from Denver," with no further explanation. Because I was
How's the weather there?
I was so afraid, right? I was so
Yeah,
afraid
yeah.
people wouldn't trust me to show up and deliver for them. And after, year 3 of business, when I got braver, I realized people actually, when I started mentioning it to clients, they love that. They love to hear about it. They always want to know where I am. They want to hear travel stories. And I feel like this feeds into something that is applicable to every freelancer. You don't have to live full time in an RV to follow this advice, which is like, don't be afraid to stand out in whatever way you naturally stand out. So like whatever it is that's unique about you and like kind of weird, don't be afraid to put that out there. Some clients probably will be turned off by most things. Like not everyone's going to love everything. And that's great because you don't want to work with somebody who doesn't want to work with you. So like let your freak flag fly, whatever that is for you. Like put it out there because man, once I started talking about it and being more open about my lifestyle and what I do, people loved it.
It is. It's so interesting. And I think too, it taps into like, wow, what's it like to live like that? I'd like to do that too. The idea like, wow, you get to change where you are every day if you want to. I think it taps into something wonderfully aspirational in all of us.
Yeah, it's that cool idea of like, oh, she's following her dreams. Like if some client isn't happy that you are pursuing your life, how you want to live it, like, yeah, you don't want to work with. I mean, that's such a good point. Like,
I mean, also logistically, there's no difference between you being in an RV and just being in, say, an Airbnb. Let's say you were freelance and you moved Airbnbs every couple of weeks. There's logistically, there's no difference between the two of those. And if you're in an Airbnb and moving every couple of days, what's the difference between being that and being in an Airbnb and not moving? And then what's the difference between that and just being at home? Functionally, there's no difference at all. So the difference is just that it makes for a much more interesting story. And like you said, people are just excited because I think you open up that dream for them as well. I know that people are listening to this and going, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder what that would look like. And sometimes it just takes seeing someone do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For anyone listening to this who's thinking like, oh, maybe I want to freelance because I would love to live location independent, go for it. Do it. It's by far the best way I found to do it. Even when, COVID hit and corporates started letting people work remote, which I know now is starting to shift a little bit back to the office. But I did the remote thing while working for a corporate and I found it very stressful. Like it was really hard to arrange because I couldn't control my own schedule. And so, people could book last minute calls with me and I might be in a trickier situation. So that was a lot tougher to manage. But oh my gosh, freelancing just opens up a whole world. So if you're at all considering a location independent lifestyle, I can't imagine not being a freelancer and doing this.
Mm-hmm. And why not? If it inspires you, if the idea inspires you, it is completely possible. I think that's one of those things that's like, wow, someday, or wouldn't that be great? Or wow, that would be my dream. But you could do it. It's not like there's something, and I don't want this to come to this is in no way an insult, Sarah, but it's not like you're magical. It's not like you are magical, but you are magical.
Quite the opposite.
You are magical. However,
in this way, no.
In this specific way, you're not a unicorn. You're not. It's you decided what you want. You took the steps, and you did it. And maybe that's the thing that makes you magical is that you did it.
Yeah.
It does not require magic. And I will say too, for any women in particular who are listening to this and have thought, maybe I want to do it, but it doesn't seem like something, that I feel capable of doing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone is capable of doing this.
That's a
If
great
I can
point.
do it, if I can do this, anybody can.
Yeah. Well, so what, and not to make this too much of a travel show, but why not?
Sure.
What
Do what you want.
do you have? Are there any safety tips that you offer to people that you could offer to people? Or
Obviously traveling solo as a woman, there is a different level of safety awareness that you have to have. I think my biggest one is just good life advice that I luckily got from a young age. And it's just good to remember in general. Just trust your gut. If you arrive somewhere and you don't have a good feeling about it, it doesn't matter if logically there's no reason for you to have that feeling. If I arrive somewhere and I don't feel good about it, I leave. Period. So that's the rule that I set for myself really early on, and that has served me well. I think also making sure people know where you are. So there's great tools now.
Yeah.
There's Life 360 where my family always knows where I am. And then I kind of have a little system to check in with my sister every day, just so like someone has heard from me on a daily basis. So things like that I think are just smart to do. Also, don't trust Google Maps. Look ahead at your route. Never trust Google Maps to not try to send you into a bizarre area or onto private property or do something crazy with your safety. Never outsource your safety to any tech tool, I would say. Just
wise.
be aware.
That. Google once tried to send me down a sidewalk at one place. And then another one, it was like, take a ferry. And I pulled up, I was like, I think I was in Switzerland. And I was like, there's no water as far as I know, besides like lakes. It was a train through the mountain, but it was called a ferry. So it worked out, luckily. But I was like, this is not a ferry. This is a train ferry, I guess. But anyway, I'm with you.
Yeah. And you would think they would have enough data by this point that they would have smoothed a lot of that out. But there's still stuff where like it's tried to send me over a pedestrian footbridge in a vehicle multiple times, through private property, through a military base. Just crazy stuff.
Yeah, like Google, come on. You know that I'm interested in buying a papaya face cream, but you can't tell me where I can actually drive. What?
You knew before I did that I needed a new pair of sneakers, but you don't know that I shouldn't drive over a pedestrian footbridge?
Google. Yeah. Put yourself together, Google. And you too while you're at it, Facebook.
But I will say overall, it is very safe for women. So most of the solo travelers that I meet are women.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it is very safe. And the 99.99% of the people that I meet are lovely, delightful people. And it is a great way to kind of get out there and meet people that you wouldn't otherwise run into. So I do want to say that. I would be remiss if I didn't say that it is a very safe lifestyle, but always, it's just good to always be aware. Trust your gut. Know where you're going,
down the
know
street.
what you're doing.
Exactly. Walking down the street is generally safe, but know where you are, know where you're going, and trust your gut. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Pay attention and do weird stuff. Have a slightly unpredictable schedule, just in case.
That is also smart. Yes, but also pro tip for everybody anywhere. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't just do the same thing every day. Yeah.
Right.
I love it. Oh, and carry a machete at all times.
Right.
Just saying. Whether you're walking down the street or in your RV,
comes with me everywhere.
I have my travel machete. I have my walking machete.
I have two dogs, so I feel like I have two machetes at hand at all times.
Yeah, you've got.
No one needs to know that they're very friendly.
My family's always had little white dogs, like little fuzzy little Bichon dogs. So
they're the meanest ones. They're the loudest ones.
They are. They're like, yeah, that's.
Yep.
And so we alluded at the beginning that you are a member of CCA Next Level. And so I'm just curious, what made you, at what point were you in your career where you were like, I need this next level? And what is your experience in there? And kind of where are you thinking of taking your business? That's 3 questions in one. I'm sorry, but go, Sarah.
Okay.
You've got
I'm
this.
ready. I can handle it.
You're a pro.
I wouldn't throw that at anyone, but I know you've got it.
Yeah. I was at a point in my business where honestly, I missed having colleagues. I didn't really miss working for corporate, but I missed being able to talk to other people who were going through, working in the same environment as I was more or less, and who were on the same or a similar path and just kind of bouncing ideas off of other people. And I also sort of hit a ceiling in my business where I felt like I'd grown it as big as I could by myself. And so I really just wanted to talk to other people who, some of them have bigger businesses than I do. Some of them have smaller businesses than I do, and get some ideas from other people who weren't me. I get really tired of talking to myself. So
I never get tired of talking to you, just so you know.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice. So yeah, I joined Next Level, and it has been such a fantastic experience. Like, I can't even tell you the mental health difference it's made to be able to hop on a call every couple of weeks with other writers and throw some things out there where, I've had some tricky client situations or just questions about how to handle things that come up in my business that I wouldn't really trust strangers on the internet, on Reddit, for example, to answer. So it's really nice to be able to come to the group and get some really good advice. And truly, it has changed the trajectory of my business. So it's been such a great experience. And, having access to both of you and getting to ask you directly, hey, you've been in business way longer than I have. How do I handle this thing? So it's just a really nice touch point for things that go on. So I can't recommend it highly enough.
Oh, well, thank you. And you are such a fantastic member of that group, of that community. So we love having you there.
I know you told us that you're hanging around Arizona for a while, but do you have plans for business and travels post?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So I really aspire to do some international traveling at some point again. So that's kind of my next goal. My goal is this fall to spend a month in Rome and rent an apartment. Now, this is all hinging on, I hope my parents listen to this, because this is all hinging on some dog sitters who will watch my dog while I'm gone. But my goal
Wonderful
is...
parents you have.
I mean, Sarah's Roman holiday, and we'll record an update from there.
So yeah, that's my goal, is to do a little bit of international travel this fall. But I don't have too much like work travel crossover. I have been able to visit a couple of clients. So that's just been fun, just because it worked out. Like, hey, I'm going to be in your town. Let's have dinner. So that's been really delightful. And I've made some like good friendships with some of my clients that way.
I love that.
Very cool.
Well, it's interesting how you can build a network.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way that I think is hard to do now that everything is so Zoom forward, and like, no shade to Zoom. Zoom is great. Thank goodness for the fact that we can do stuff like this, right? And I would go insane if I couldn't get on calls with other next levelers every couple of weeks and talk to other human beings. But it's just, I don't think it happens as often now that you get to meet people in person. And I probably wouldn't be, if I lived in Denver still, I wouldn't be like flying places to meet my clients normally, unless there was a huge project and a good reason to. So it's been a fun way to add that little extra level of interaction and get to meet them as people.
I love it. So I guess I think I was going to say, like, what advice do you have? But, you've given so much advice, and I think you've just offered so much inspiration. Is there anything, and this is unfair, but is there anything that we haven't asked you, or anything that we haven't given you the opportunity to share that you want to, knowing that people listening are either getting into copywriting or kind of starting to really build their careers?
Or explore the past potentials too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one that's come up for me recently that I think is worth sharing, because I wish that I had paid more attention to this when I started, which is I had this idea in my mind that because you can make money copywriting, that it must not be a very creative pursuit, right? Like, because it's used for sales, because businesses need copywriting, I was like, oh, okay, well, copywriting's over here, creative writing's over here. I probably can't do this anymore. I'll just do this. And I just want to tell everybody listening that is a very false dichotomy. That is in no way true. Copywriting is creative writing. And so if you are somebody who loves writing in general and loves to read and just loves kind of messing around with creativity, copywriting is 100% a creative career. And don't minimize that part of what you do in your free time, or that play, because it is fun. Like, copywriting is a really fun career. I get to get paid to brainstorm and like bounce weird ideas around, and I don't use them all, but sometimes, like, you never know what's going to link to the idea that's going to spark the right tagline or the right ad for your client. And so 100%, if you are somebody who loves creative writing, keep doing that. Keep reading as much as you can, and don't just like nerd out on, I don't know, the old school copywriters, like the Ogilvy stuff, read that if you like it. But read fun stuff that you love, that gets you excited about what you do, because it will only help your writing and the writing that you're getting paid for. So I think that can really prevent a lot of burnout and getting into some of those ruts. Because for a while I got into a rut, and then I realized, like, I'm approaching this in the wrong way. I'm the one making my work less fun than it could be. It is an inherently fun career. So don't forget that.
I love that. I love so much of that.
So good.
Also, it makes me think of what you said. You said at the beginning of something, you know, I didn't write the next great American novel. That was, I'm paraphrasing what you said. But I wanted to say earlier, not yet, because I don't know about you, but I feel like copywriting, like, I just feel like my skills as a writer are so much better. Now, have I written my great American novel? No, I have not done so either. But
not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
And not yet. And I do feel strong. I'm like, it's just, I haven't made it a habit, which shameless plug for writestarts.com, get free writing prompts. But it's just getting that habit versus, you know, I have my work habits. But yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I've learned so much about just showing up and practicing through copywriting, because you have to. And then also, you know, I had one of my favorite writing professors in college. He used to say, get all your bad writing out now. Like, your original writing will be bad. Your first book, your first short stories, it will all be bad. There's a certain amount of bad writing that we all have in us, but you have to get it out of you. So, like, get it out of you early. Essentially, the only way to get better is to just keep doing it. And I think that's true of copywriters too. You know, I used to, and this still happens, I'll read something that other writers put together and I think, oh my God, that was a killer line. Like, I wish I were as good as them, right? Like, oh, some of these copywriters are genius. Everything they put out is brilliant. The only way that you're going to improve your own skills is to just keep showing up and practicing. And a lot of those people did not start out writing that kind of stuff. They wrote a lot of garbage at first.
And in fact, I can guarantee that for every amazing line in that wherever they are, they're senior copywriter, they're whatever, in that particular job, that project, before they got to that amazing line, there was a lot of garbage.
There's a lot of ugly.
Absolutely guarantee it. Yes.
I love project I do now. Yeah, I still have a whole doc of ugly to get to the good stuff. Are you kidding me?
That's why I never send a client my original Google Doc. I always copy it and send them the one that looks like it was just fully formed.
Same. Yeah, exactly. Clients don't need to know that all that ugly stuff came first.
If anyone saw my original draft, I would be humiliated.
Yeah.
No, but also to that point, like, I look back on stuff that was quote unquote good. It answered the brief. It did its purpose. It served its job. And I look back on it. I'm like, oh, that wasn't as great as it could be. But, like, you know what? It did what it needed to do. And I think I saw something the other day of, like, good versus bad copy. And they were getting into it of, like, here's how you know if it's good. And I'm like, but we don't actually know if it's good if we don't know if it did what it intended to do. What was the creative brief?
Exactly.
Did it answer the brief? Did people actually take the action they wanted to take? Like, we don't actually know. We know good writing in the sense of, like, oh, this is grammatically correct or sounds good. But, like, is it good copy?
Great point. Not to go off too much of a tangent, but, like, the lines that we look at now, like, oh my gosh, Got Milk was so amazing. But it's so amazing because it worked. If that campaign hadn't worked, and also part of that's because they put a whole bunch of money behind it. But if that campaign hadn't worked, we wouldn't look at it now and say, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. We would look at that campaign and think, oh, that really was terrible. Remember that it was some Budweiser or something, and they had the whole campaign that was like, "What's up?" Do you remember that? And it became like a whole cultural thing. There was right after that, there was Dr. Scholl's, I think, Dr. Scholl's foot inserts, and they tried to do something similar. And I just remember the commercials that it was, hey, how you doing? They're like, I'm gelling. Ooh, is he gelling? She's gelling. And it did not work. It did not work because they were trying to do something similar. But, like, if they'd come before What's Up, or maybe like you remember the Smirnoff Ice, you got iced, where at parties people over 21 would, you know, like, yo, you have to drink a Smirnoff Ice, and that's pure luck that kicked off, pure luck. So sorry, go off on a tangent, but that's a really great point about the fact that what is great sometimes just comes down to luck and how it lands in the marketplace.
And to your point, just lessening that pressure on ourselves to like, have fun. Have fun.
Mm-hmm.
I love that point so much. And also, I've seen mediocre copy make a lot of money. So like you can make great money for your clients as a beginning writer, writing pretty good, like decent copy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, yeah, whatever pressure you feel to write, like, I don't know, Don Draper from day one, don't.
Right.
Because you don't need to.
Yeah, exactly.
And half the time you need to get feedback from the outside world to then adjust it potentially, you know? I feel like we try to perfect and it's like, we can't until it's doing its thing and we get some information back.
I think that's so true. You can never know. Nobody knows. Even people who have worked in ad agencies for forever. I've written ads where the whole team, we work together to build something. We're so sure it's going to hit. We all love it. We all agree the copy's great, the creative's great, and the ad just doesn't take off for whatever reason. It just doesn't work. And we go back and change it, and we all agree this one's not quite as good, and that's the one that hits. So you just don't know.
We literally joke about that now with tests that we sometimes run of like, oh, this is the one that we don't think will do well, so it'll probably be the one that actually does well. Like,
There's no way of knowing, but you put it out there.
The best foot forward.
Yeah. And even as we talk about Don Draper, as we talk about Ogilvy, as we talk about, and Don Draper, again, I realize is a fictional character.
John Hamm is a great copywriter.
He's a John Hamm. If only he could write ham level copy is what I'm looking for. But you look at the great classic copywriters, even every pro copywriter has had stuff that just tanked. It just did. You remember the great stuff, but everybody has had stuff that has tanked. It's part of the game.
So much of the great stuff we don't even know who wrote it because it's a team. Like I feel like we put so much pressure on an individual because of the shows and the people that started an ad agency, but the 99.9% of copywriters are not a name.
Exactly.
And half the time, even if they are a name, they didn't even really write the copy. Somebody said a phrase to them and they used that phrase.
Yes.
And it stuck.
Yeah.
So they didn't even write it. So really, I truly believe great copywriting is great listening. Like just listen to what people say. Write that.
That's so true. That is so true. Yeah. Great copywriting is great listening. Write that down, everybody. Good stuff. Sarah, this was fantastic. I feel like we need to keep talking for another couple hours because everything that you're saying is super insightful and helpful, and just clear your schedule. You're in it.
Next time I'll talk about the black tank and the fun parts of RVing.
Ooh,
that's part 2.
That's cliffhanger. I like it.
Yeah,
cliffhanger. Gotta leave them wanting more.
Oh, expect a follow-up, everybody. No. Very exciting. Then, and I'm excited to see where you'll be from. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Thank you. This was such a late, and like Kate was saying, long overdue. Every once in a while it happens like, oh yeah, this person that we see all the time, like, oh shit, we haven't had him on the
see her all the
podcast
time,
yet.
but we haven't had her on the podcast.
Oh yeah. But so thank you for coming on today and chatting with us today and sharing so much insight and so much to aspire to. I mean, not just yes, the travel, absolutely, but also just in terms of who you are as a professional and how you approach your work and approach your career. It is aspirational as well. So thank you for sharing that.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. This was great. Always good to talk to you both.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to you.
And before we go, though, if someone is listening and wants to hire you, I don't know if you have room in your schedule, but if you did, where can they find you on the interwebs?
Best place would be my website, which is flourishwriting.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Love it. We'll put the links in the show notes. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. And with that, we will catch you all in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.